If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment cause chaos. Use ShipStation instead. From running a business out of your garage to multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating tasks. Plus, you'll get the best shipping rates from global carriers. Calm the chaos with the shipping software that delivers. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 62 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, what you got going on today?
Man, just having a good old time doing some podcasting.
We like to do some podcasting.
Yeah, podcasting. Sitting in your overly crowded basement space area.
Yeah, the studio/basement is a little crowded today. We had a slight flood, so we had to move all the furniture into kind of one side of the room, and got a lot of people in here trying to clean up the mess. Not right now, but they have been over the last couple of days.
Yeah.
All right, Gibbs, let's talk about some new support we received. Got to give Patreon shout outs to Allison Lee, Jen Mass, Leah, no last name.
No, that's cool. You can do that.
If you can pull it off, it is cool.
That's right.
Christina Sykes, Renee Poirier, Zoe Pearson.
Right through your heart, man.
Pearson, right through your heart. I like that one. Daryl Russ jumped out at our highest level. Aaron also went no last name.
Wonder how Daryl's other brothers are doing.
Daryl and his other brother, Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl and Daryl.
Sarah Arnold.
Oh, thanks, Sarah.
Sarah,
because I just said Daryl. Sarah. Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
My other sister, Sarah.
Yeah.
We had Jennifer Schrader, who's been with us on Patreon, but jumped up to our highest level, so she gets a special shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Catherine Lacey, Tina Gardner, Danielle Grolix.
Yeah, that's what I would say too.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Designs by D-Lo jumped out to our highest level. Not sure what it is. I have to check it out, but there'll probably be some Googling of that.
It's people, I'm sure they're like, why wouldn't you guys look that up before? We just don't. We just roll it.
We just do.
It's
what we like to do. Tinley Cotton, Julie Warmouth, Steve Snyder, and Leanne Hippensteel. So appreciate that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Lainey from the True Crime Fan Club podcast. Lainey's one of our favorite people. She's actually supported our show for a very long time, and we support hers as well. And she supports a number of true crime podcasts, as do we on Patreon.
I would say she's very vocal in the true crime podcast arena.
She is, and she's known in the true crime podcast circles as a unbelievable person, always willing to lend a hand. So if you have not checked out True Crime Fan Club podcast, check it out.
Yeah, give it a listen for sure.
She does amazing work. She also did some voiceover work for my podcast, Criminology.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, as did you. So you probably didn't even know that.
Would you just take all my little outtakes and just blended it?
I just stick things in front of you, and I'm like, Gibby, here, read this.
Read that. Did I know that it was going to come back and bite me? No.
No. And we had some PayPal support as well. We had Samantha S., our favorite.
Yeah.
She just keeps supporting us all the time.
She does, man. She's amazing.
Elizabeth McKisson.
She is McKisson.
Jennifer Murray.
Yeah.
Mike Holbert.
Hey, Mike.
Shelley Lanthorn.
Thank you, Shelley.
And Alex Howe.
How's he do it?
I don't know how he does it.
Or how she do it.
Or how she does it.
You never know.
And then last but not least, Emily Brandenburg. So a lot of support this month. We really appreciate it.
Is that another M?
Well, it's Emily, but she might go by
She
M.
might go by M. You never know. Yeah,
We got a lot of M's.
we do.
So we appreciate the new support. We appreciate all the people that continue to support us month after month. It really goes a long way to helping us continue to do what we do. All right, CrimeCon's coming up. If you're still on the fence, do it. Make that decision.
Come see us.
Yeah, definitely. But if you have not purchased your badge yet and you're going to, make sure you use our promo code TCAT. And then we have a new episode of True Crime All the Time out right now. It's on Dean Coral,
Yeah.
the Candy Man.
Carl.
Coral, unbelievably bad dude.
Terrible, actually.
But Coral is fascinating to me, Gibbs, because he wasn't just the lone serial killer plotting, sitting in his basement type that you think about. He actually recruited accomplices to help him carry out the selection process, we'll say. I don't want to give too much away, but it's an unbelievable story. So make sure you check that out. All right, Gibbs, let's get into this episode of Unsolved. We are talking about Rhonda Casto. And we're going back to March 16th of 2009, up in the beautiful mountains of Eagle Creek Trail, overlooking the Columbia River Gorge. This is in the state of Oregon. Beautiful, beautiful country, beautiful area.
Oh, yeah. Oregon is, it's just breathtaking, some parts of it.
You say Oregon, huh?
Did I say Oregon?
Yeah. Is that the way you say it?
That's what I said. I get a lot of slack for it, too.
Yeah. I've always said Oregon, but I've heard it said.
Yeah.
Some people say it that way. But like I said, very beautiful area. And this is an extremely busy area for, nature lovers, hikers, because of the trails that they have there, because of the unbelievable scenery. But it's also, I guess what you'd have to call it, it's kind of dangerous. The trails are narrow. There's big drop-offs. So it's a place that, a lot of hikers go, but you have to be careful in this area. And it's on this day, March 16th, 2009, Rhonda Casto, she's 23 years old at the time, and had just had a baby girl about 9 months prior to this with her boyfriend, Stephen Nichols, is hiking these trails of Eagle Creek. It's the two of them together. And the story of how these two met is pretty interesting. It was Rhonda's mom that met Stephen first when she answered an ad that he had placed for a room for rent. So apparently Stephen had 2 vacant rooms in his condo, and Rhonda's mom moved into one. And as she's living there with Stephen, she's trying to hook him up with her daughter, Rhonda. But Stephen was recently divorced, and at this time he was 30 years old. Rhonda was only 20, so there's a 10-year, age difference there. And he told Rhonda's mom, "I'm just not ready for that. No thanks." But that was before he met Rhonda.
Yeah, I mean, so his, Rhonda's mom would occasionally like, "Come on, go out, my daughter, go out, my daughter." He's like, no. And then Rhonda came over to see her mom and needed to get something from Stephen, so knocked on his bedroom door. And I guess when he opened that door, he just, his just jaw dropped, because she is stunning. And when he saw that, clearly his mind changed.
Right. So he sees her for the first time and very quickly says, probably to himself, I've made a mistake here.
Yeah.
Telling her mom that, no, I don't want to go out with her. So they do start dating, and pretty quickly Rhonda moves in to the condo as well. And Rhonda's mom would later say that Rhonda was attracted to his success. Stephen was a successful guy, but also to his intelligence, because he made his living as a day trader, and apparently he was pretty good at it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if anybody's ever been turned on by my, or wanted to go out with me, because my intellectual That's why.
Your intellectual quality.
Yeah, that's why.
Well,
Yeah, good thing I have that chiseled. Well, I don't have that either. So,
right. I mean, luckily you had the chiseled good looks and you were a track star, wrestling star, which you've stated many times.
It's a track.
You said wrestling too.
I'm happy for this guy,
that he's smart.
Yeah.
But Rhonda's mom would also say that her daughter told her prior to this hike that Stephen had been bugging her for almost a month to go hiking. And she would make a prophetic statement to her mom that was, he's either going to give me a ring or he's going to throw me off a cliff.
She's thinking, they've been together for 3 years. They've got a 9-month-old baby now. So maybe this is going to be the thing. Maybe he's going to propose. But also, and she was serious, as we're talking about it. Maybe he's going to push me off the cliff. So, I mean, a bizarre statement to say, but not too far off.
Well, I think that's why I use the word prophetic, because, Rhonda's mom would say that she wasn't really sure, to your point, Gibbs, whether Rhonda was serious or joking, because she must have said it in a pretty serious way. It wasn't a ha-ha type of comment.
Right.
So on that morning of March 16th, it was brisk that morning, just above freezing. It's way too cold for me to be out hiking.
Yeah, I mean...
Or doing much of anything else, to be honest.
As I'll say, you don't even get off your couch unless it's over 70.
Exactly. And to top it off, it began to rain on and off during the hike. So you can only imagine how that made everything damp. The trails, which we've already talked about, were narrow and pretty dangerous, started to become more slippery, especially where there was any vegetation, right? So you get greenery, then you get the water on top of that.
Pretty slick.
It can make for a slick situation.
I mean, I know the times that I go hiking and stuff like that, when that moss gets wet, man, it's not good.
Well, on top of that, you have to deal with any type of trail wash, right? That would come from, the showers. So you got the mud and you get the cliffs, the trails at let's say the foot of the cliff. Well, that rain is sliding down the cliff towards the trail.
That's true. Yeah, exactly right. It's washing that away.
Right.
Yeah.
It's muddy. It's just, to me, it doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, it would have been a good idea to go home.
Yes. The minute that I got out there and it started raining, it'd be like Chevy Chase and Vacation. Roll them up.
Roll them up.
But they kept on, right? They pressed forward on this hike, and they were hiking up to a higher elevation, and was actually to one of the more narrow spots on the trail. Again, does not seem like a good decision to me. I mean, this part of the trail was so narrow and so dangerous that they had to have a rope on the trail that you would hold on to help guide you along.
Yeah, so I can see that. You're in a little tight little spot there where it's a little steep and rough to get by. You grab that anchored rope just to make sure you keep your footing and stuff like that till you get back around. That makes sense.
Well, they described this part of the trail as barely wide enough for even one person.
Really?
So when we say narrow, that's very narrow.
Yeah.
But it would be at this exact point on the trail that Rhonda would fall. And she would fall over 150 feet to the ground below to her death.
Man, I just think that's such a terrible way to go.
It is, because those, I don't know, however many seconds.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine what that would be like, knowing.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it would be quick because the fall wouldn't take very long, but there would be a number of seconds where everything is.
Yeah, exactly. Ending. I mean, you just.
So Rhonda's boyfriend, Stephen Nichols, he witnesses this. He sees her go over the side, and he would say later that he rushes down the trail as fast and as safe as he could, gets to her side, finds her laying down below. She's not breathing. And he also said that he tried to resuscitate her, but she would not respond. but he couldn't call for help because he had no cell service in that area. So he had to hike back out to the parking lot in order to call 911.
Yeah, you had to keep going until you got to a safe spot that would finally, you've done it. We've all done it, where you hold your phone out waiting to get the bars that that you finally got a signal that you can make a call.
And I imagine that was not a quick process to get back to the parking lot before he could make the 911 call.
Yeah, I'm sure there was some time delay there.
But he does make the call, and he tells the 911 operator that his girlfriend was acting weird. He says, almost like she was high, tells the operator that she was goofing off, running on the slippery rocks and moss, and then fell to her death. Now, Rhonda's mom would later say that during this period of time, she was babysitting her granddaughter, but she had a very uneasy feeling. And you've heard about this before, Gibbs, about a mother and daughter separated by, however many miles.
Yeah.
Something happens and one or the other has this feeling.
Right, yeah.
You hear it a lot, but this is the type of feeling that she has, like something is not right.
Just so uneasy.
She expected Rhonda to call, but she didn't. And when time went by and Rhonda still hadn't called, her mom tried to call her, but there was no answer. So the hours are ticking away. And Rhonda's mom is, as you can only imagine, is probably becoming more and more worried. She's calling every hour, but she's not getting an answer. And it wouldn't be until later that evening when the local emergency responders, they have a chaplain go to Rhonda's mom's house to give her the bad news.
This is the worst. It's like anybody that has kids, it's like the nightmare that you never want to have happen to you.
No, it's the worst thing that you can imagine. And what I can't get, Gibbs, is so many hours have passed. We know that Stephen Nichols has access to the phone. He called 911, but at no point during this whole period of time does he call Rhonda's mom, who he knows very well.
Yeah.
And tell her that something tragic has happened.
It would have been my second call, right? 911, the mother of my girlfriend.
I would think everybody listening would think the same thing.
Yeah.
That would just be a natural progression.
Yeah, if I was innocent, boom, boom. If I was guilty, it would have been like 911, my attorney.
That's a different progression.
Yeah, yeah.
But we know that Stephen calls his dad and tells him what happened to Rhonda. And it would come out later that during this phone call, he was so upset that he could barely speak.
Yeah, according to his father, when his son called him to tell him this, that he was just couldn't understand him, just, babbling and things like that.
Crying uncontrollably.
Yeah.
Very hard to understand.
But he was able to get from all that Rhonda fell to her death.
So a few days later, there is a memorial service held for Rhonda, and we have to talk about her. Everybody comes out, and everything you read about Rhonda was that she was a very loving, funny, outgoing person. She was opinionated. She had no problem speaking her mind. Now, you touched on the fact that she was stunning, and she was.
And she was, yeah.
She was a gorgeous person. And to that point, she was an aspiring model.
Yeah, she had some things cooking. She had, her portfolio was starting to look pretty good, really. And I think, like Nike or Reebok or one of those athletic firms, I mean, she had some potential there. And so she was very athletic. So it just made sense that with her portfolio that she was looking at Nike and, Reebok and places like that to do some modeling.
Now, one thing that would come out from Rhonda's mom was that during the memorial service, according to her, Stephen was acting very strangely. Basically, it appeared that, he was not even grieving. Like, he was totally fine in her opinion. Now, of course, Stephen would say that he was just shut down at that point. he was internalizing this whole thing. And that's a very gray area that you and I have talked about before.
I was gonna say, we've talked about this before, and how one is supposed to act in the eyes of the public, and how people just actually handle things differently.
Yeah, I think everybody handles that type of grief differently. And to say that somebody should be crying uncontrollably, or whether they really are just shut down and they're numb, and maybe it's going to hit them later, or it's already hit them and now they're out of tears.
I think I would be more the one that would be. I don't think that I'd be outwardly emotional. I don't think I would be. I think what happens in privacy be different, but I think out in the open, I'd probably try to hold it all together.
And I think there are a lot of people that try, right? They're probably crying uncontrollably at home, but they're putting on a brave face maybe during the service. I don't know. I guess my point is, I think it's very tough to judge people by the way they grieve.
Yeah, I agree.
But county investigators, they look into Rhonda's death. Now, the autopsy supported Stephen's claim that she had been high that day. Traces of marijuana were found in her system, as well as prescription drugs, and all of this could have affected her balance. The medical examiner declined to declare the death an accident, but at that point in time, Stephen Nichols was not charged with any crime.
So, I mean, the medical examiner wasn't 100% confident by not just saying it was an accident, even after all that. It's interesting.
It is. And police would continue to question Stephen Nichols about Rhonda's death. Stephen and his little girl would eventually move in with his family that lived on the other side of Oregon. But then you get about 4 years on, and Stephen takes the girl and they move to China.
That's different.
That is very different.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a move, that's about as big of a move as you can make.
That's huge, man.
So they moved to an area that was about 75 miles from Shanghai in a village called Wuxi.
Oh, yeah.
You know it very well, Gibbs.
Oh, yeah.
I know you spent some time
there working in the fields.
In the fields. Now, Stephen was teaching English to Chinese businessmen.
Man, I could get that gig.
You would be great at that.
I would be good at that. That's something to think about.
You should look into that. You could make a fortune.
I probably could.
But while he was over there in China, Stephen met a woman named Landy Yin Yan, and they would eventually marry.
That's interesting, too, that he meets Landy and they get married fairly soon. But he was with Rhonda for over 3 years and child. And I know it does different scenarios, different worlds.
Yeah, but I think your point is well taken.
Yeah.
Is there something to that? I don't know. But I think it's a valid point to bring up. So we know that Rhonda died in 2009. Stephen is now in China. He's married. And it's in April of 2014, so 5 years later, after her death, that a grand jury would hear evidence and they would indict Stephen Nichols for the murder of Rhonda.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. 5 years later, this secret grand jury gets together and...
Well, and for him, he's moved on. Obviously, he's moved on because he's in
Asia,
he's married to another woman.
It's a grand jury, so he's not even notified. He doesn't know anything about it.
And it's almost a year later, February of 2015. Stephen and his daughter, they fly home from China to Oregon to see some family. But when their plane lands in San Francisco, because they got to change planes from San Francisco to Oregon, the authorities are there. And they arrest him for Rhonda's murder. And that was a huge shock for him.
Oh, it had to be. Getting off that plane, trying to catch the next one, and excuse me, sir. And next thing you know, you're arrested for a murder of your girlfriend that you are saying it was an accident. 5 years ago, and you're arresting me
now
for it?
6 years
6
ago.
years now, yeah, exactly.
And let's not forget, he has his daughter who would be 6 or 7 at this point.
Probably pushing 7 years at that time. It would definitely be a very strange situation.
So they extradite Stephen back to Oregon. They charge him with the murder. He pled not guilty. The authorities released his daughter to live with Rhonda's mother while all of this was going on. Meanwhile, investigators revisit what is now considered the murder scene, and a forensics team would carry up to the top of the trail 2 dummies. And these dummies weighed the same as Rhonda weighed. And what they were trying to do was a test to help prove that Rhonda was pushed. So they're conducting this test with these dummies, and they do it a bunch of times. And basically they are in different ways pushing the dummies over the side of the cliff, seeing where they land. But I think the meat of it is, Gibbs, they can never get these dummies to land in the same spot where Rhonda ultimately ended up.
Right.
And there's going to be a lot at trial that comes out about these tests and how they were conducted and what they really mean and things like that. That's why we're bringing them up. They become important later on. Now, in August of 2015, Stephen Nichols has his bail hearing. It's basically almost like a mini trial. They have witnesses, the whole shebang. Stephen's attorney is a man by the name of Mike Arnold. And this is the same guy who recently represented Eamon Bundy. And Bundy became famous as the leader of this armed occupation of a national wildlife refuge in Oregon. I mean, it was all over the news. It was a big story. So in this bail hearing, Nichols' attorney, Mike Arnold, he questions the man who organized the dummy experiment, and it's a deputy by the name of Daniel DeHaven. And Arnold asks him, what is your opinion about whether or not Miss Casto was pushed? And DeHaven says, I believe that it's most likely or most probable that she was pushed. So they go back and forth on the questioning about how these experiments were conducted. And at one point, the deputy admits that in 6 different attempts, they could not get the dummy to land in the same spot that they believed was Rhonda's final resting place. But the judge ultimately sets the bail at $2 million. And that is a lot of money.
That's a big chunk of change.
And it forces Stephen to have to stay in jail, awaiting trial. Now, his attorney, Mike Arnold, comes out and makes a statement that, people fall every day in their homes. Imagine adding exhaustion and weather to that situation. So he's putting it out there that, she could have easily just fallen. Why are we saying that she was pushed? Now, at the same time, the defense team is also, just like the police did, trying to reconstruct the crime scene. So they're conducting their own tests in the hopes that, that may give them some type of advantage at trial. But there is one problem, right? This is 6 years after Rhonda fell. And the trail, it's everything is not the same as it was 6 years prior. We talked about washout. We talked about all of that. There are some things that change in 6 years, and it happened in this situation. Now, the way Stephen explained it to his defense team about what happened that day was that he and Rhonda were heading down the trail. Rhonda was in a great mood. She was joking. She was laughing. At one point, she even put a towel around her shoulders and was calling herself Supergirl, apparently, according to Stephen. But at one point, she broke into a run, and according to Nichols, she slipped on the wet path, and that's when she fell more than 150 feet to her death.
Yeah.
And we have to go back and talk about, these gorge trails for just a minute. Rhonda died in 2009. Her death was the 4th fatality on those trails in a 6-month period back during that time frame. Like we tried to do, we stressed how dangerous these trails were and still are. I mean, there are dozens and dozens of search and rescue operations that occur there every year. And that Stephen's attorney is using all of this in his defense. And he comes out and just says, this was no murder, and that he was going to be able to prove that Rhonda's death was an accident. And a lot of what he's going to hang his hat on is the condition and the location of Rhonda's body. So you have the Oregon medical examiner by the name of Christopher Young performed Rhonda's autopsy and testified at the bail hearing that all of Rhonda's serious injuries occurred below her waist. So her pelvis was essentially shattered. And this suggested that she landed predominantly on her legs and her pelvis. So Stephen's attorney thought she had to slip since she landed on her pelvis, as opposed to if she had been pushed, she probably would have tumbled, somersaulted. It would have been a fall more like that, and you would have seen injuries on a lot more of her body.
According to him.
According to him.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what he's putting out there. And then you talk about the test dummy falls. And the part that he harps on about those is that there were no tests done to see whether or not Rhonda made any contact with the ledges on the way down.
Yeah, and we've seen that, and many of us seen that in movies when someone falls off a cliff and they hit a ledge right below and bounce and find themselves down to the bottom eventually. Brutal, for sure.
Yeah.
But he was kind of taken back at the fact that they didn't try to recreate that just to see if that played any role into how she fell. So
he's saying that the tests were done more as if she cleared everything.
Right. And
cleared the ledges going down the cliffside and fell unimpeded, let's say.
Exactly.
Onto the ground below.
As if you were pushed.
As if you were pushed.
Yeah.
As opposed to, and I'll go to like a show like Ridiculousness.
Yeah.
Which I watch a lot. They got tons of videos of, people at the lake on a big cliff messing around. They're going to jump into this lake or the ocean or whatever it is. Well, naturally they slip, but they don't go into the water. They tumble down, they hit the side, and then they go into the water.
Right.
Was not expecting my knowledge of Ridiculousness to come into this episode.
Well, but it did. It paid off.
You never know where things are going to come
All
from.
those pointless hours sitting on the couch watching.
Wasted hours.
Yeah.
They're not wasted.
No, not now. Now there's the reasons behind it.
But he's making this point, the attorney is, that this type of contact with any part of the cliffside below would have dramatically affected where Rhonda's body finally came to rest. And rightfully so. I believe that it would have. There's a big difference of clearing everything and landing at a point versus, hitting a ledge or something along the cliffside below. That's going to change the trajectory, I would think.
Oh, for sure.
Significantly. And Nichols' attorney also comes out and says, the state's case is extremely weak. He said that investigators were stating the motive was because Nichols had been cheating on Rhonda, and supposedly he was mistreating her, and he was also verbally abusive. Now, Rhonda's mom would come out and, I don't know if she would back that up 100%, but she would say that their relationship was not great.
Yeah, she would say it was rocky.
Had been rocky for a while.
Yeah.
There was a friend that came forward and said that she witnessed the couple get into a shouting match at a local bar. Nichols apparently got jealous. He was acting rude, yelling at Rhonda and calling her horrible names.
That's never good.
No.
Never good.
No, never good. Wouldn't be good in private. It's not good in public. But I guess it escalated, and he got pretty loud, according to this witness. At one point, Rhonda begged him to leave the bar, and this witness said that she heard Rhonda say, "Maybe I'll leave you," and that Stephen allegedly said, "If you leave me, I'll kill you." So if true, that is somewhat damaging. People say stuff off the cuff, but I can guarantee you, Gibbs, as mad as I've been at my wife, and we've had some pretty good shouting matches, as most married couples do.
Yeah.
At no point have I ever said, "If you do or don't do this, I will kill you." At no point have I ever said that.
Yeah. Or has she?
No, I don't think so. Let me think about that. No, I don't think she's ever said, "I'll kill you."
Yeah. Yeah. I may hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah. May cut something off of you.
I was going to say, she might have said at one point, "If you cheat on me, I'll cut something off."
Yeah.
But
you wake up with a changed person.
no, I don't think either one of us have ever made that type of threat. I mean, that to me, that's not an off the cuff remark, or if it is, there's something deep under the surface.
Yeah, if someone says that to you in a heated argument, they've probably been thinking about it somehow at one point, that it comes up that fast.
Yeah, it's not just going to slip out.
Yeah.
"I'll kill you."
So you might want to reevaluate your
We're
relationship.
going to get emails that say, "My spouse and I, we tell each other that all the time.
Yeah.
We get mad and we say we're going to kill
I'm going
each
to
other."
kill you. I'm going to make you an episode on TCAT. Well, argument, jealousy. Jealousy's a terrible thing anyway.
Jealousy and money, man.
Yeah.
I mean, how
You
much
jealous
of it,
guy?
No,
No?
not at all.
Is your wife a jealous woman?
No, more than I am.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
she doesn't really have much to be jealous about. So,
Hey, and you're the Fergie, man. Team Fergie.
Team Fergie. Now, Stephen would say that he didn't even know this person, this witness, and that none of what this witness said ever occurred. He said he never threatened anyone, but Rhonda's mom had her own theory about why Stephen Nichols may have killed her daughter. And it was because Rhonda was going to leave him, and Stephen Nichols didn't want to pay child support for their daughter.
Yeah.
That was her theory.
Yeah, child support, one child. I mean, you'd really not want to have to pay it to do something like that, because it's not the end of the world. Child support for one child.
I think people have killed for a lot less than that.
That's true.
But
that's true.
I do see your theory. For those of us that think in normal, rational terms,
Right.
You can never imagine doing something like that over what is not trivial, but
I would think if he was, it would be more over the fact that he can't have her. I can see that. That's a whole different
then paying
emotional.
the child. Yes, then
to pay the child support if he's intelligent, making good money. To pay the minimum state child support or whatever.
I would agree with you.
It's not gonna impact his wallet.
But on the flip side, there have been many, many murders committed over child support, I bet.
Yeah, you're probably right.
But there were other financial considerations that had to be taken into account, because it was alleged that Stephen Nichols had lost a lot of money in the stock market, roughly $250,000.
That'd hurt you.
That puts a dent in the old wallet.
Yeah.
But maybe even more concerning than that was the fact that apparently he had recently taken out a $1 million life insurance policy on Rhonda a few months before her death.
So kind of suspicious, but, his attorney will say that not that suspicious, because not only did he take it out on her, he took it out on him, and he did so because they wanted to be good parents. They have a 9-month-old, and he wanted to make sure that if anything happened, that the child will be taken care of. I think probably the factor that catches people's eyes is that it was for $1 million. That's a pretty healthy policy for somebody at that age. So, but I'm guessing, we don't know. I'm assuming it was term anyway. So maybe $1,000 a year.
Yeah, versus like whole life.
Yeah. So,
but all right, I'll take the flip side again and say, if you're going to do that, you would want to take one out on yourself as well.
Yeah.
You wouldn't just
That's
take it
true.
out on the person that you're thinking about killing.
Yeah, you got to make it look good.
You got to make it look good. I'm not saying he did that. I'm saying if you were going to do that, you sure as hell wouldn't want to just take it out on the person that you were hoping to collect on.
Point taken.
But again, it could just be bad timing as well. Because if you look at it, Gibbs, they had a 9-month-old daughter. So she hadn't been around that long. It's when you start thinking about, man, I got to get my shit in order.
Yeah, you really do. When that child comes, I know I did when my first was born. I was like, stuff just got real, man. I got to make sure it's just not about me anymore.
Right.
It's not about me, my wife, right? It's about, this third person now.
You got to be an adult now. You got to do adult stuff
Yeah.
like take out life insurance and
Adulting, man.
adulting.
But, he would admit that he was abusive to her. He did admit that, but never physically abusive to her. Just, playing the verbal and mental games that some people play.
Well, and his attorney would come out and say that too, that the only thing that Stephen Nichols was guilty of was being verbally abusive to Rhonda at times, but added it was never physical. But investigators had a problem with that. They would say that that was not true because they had a picture of Rhonda with red marks on her after an alleged fight with Stephen Nichols.
Yeah, I guess when this alleged fight happened, she took these pictures and then she just, as a precaution, she sent them to her brother.
And it was said that, he pushed Rhonda down the stairs. She had these red marks on her, but she also had bruises all over her back. Now, to be fair, people would come out and say, hey, Rhonda had a bit of a temper as well. And apparently it was known that she had taken a bite out of Stephen at one point.
Okay.
So
Well,
she could get a little... Now, we don't know what happened to precipitate that, but something had to happen for you to make a little snack out of your partner.
Yeah, I've been around some couples that they can lay it down, man.
I know
it's uncomfortable.
Some too. I know some too.
Yeah, you're like, oh man.
Yeah, when you're at a party and it breaks out,
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, honey, get your coat because we're leaving.
We're out of here.
I was not aware that the Watusis were biters.
That's right. Either you got to get out or you got to get the popcorn and sit back and watch the show.
Yeah, whichever tact you want to take.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of unknowns here, right? There's things that come out about both Rhonda and Stephen, but in a case like that, so let's say she did bite him. Well, we don't know what he did to, maybe start a fight, provoke, who knows, right? A lot of that part is unknown. Now, going back to that August 2015 bail hearing, the lead detective was on the stand, talked about how his suspicions were further confirmed by some stories that he heard from Rhonda's family that she had apparently conveyed to them. And these were stories about the fact that if she didn't come back from this hiking trip, it was because Stephen pushed her. And I think, Gibbs, this goes back directly to what Rhonda had said to her mom. So this detective would say that he believes they got into a fight while they were hiking and Stephen Nichols pushed Rhonda in anger and she went over the cliff and fell to her death.
If they fight like some of the stories made it sound like, you can see, that they both anger up and something could just go too far and you push and someone slips and next thing you know, they're dead. So
yeah, I see that, but man, that is a bad place to get into an argument, right? How we describe the trail and this hiking area.
Yeah, it's one of those things that you could say accident, you could say murder, you could actually maybe, depending on how it happened, say manslaughter.
But this case has some problems that we have to talk about. For one, some of the important evidence in the case somehow was misplaced. Probably some of the most important evidence that was misplaced was the autopsy photos. Now, the sheriff came out and said that they were likely stolen, and not misplaced. And somehow the original lead detective was kind of thrown under the bus as being the most likely suspect in the theft. But he's denied this under oath, that he ever stole any evidence, that he ever intentionally destroyed any evidence. But that's very strange, because you have to think, Gibbs, those autopsy photos would be very important in the trial.
I would think
maybe to both sides. I don't know.
Yeah, I think on both sides you'd want them.
Now, in January of 2016, Nichols' defense attorney, Mike Arnold, attempted to have all charges against Stephen Nichols dismissed. He was essentially putting the prosecution's case on trial at a hearing to get these charges thrown out. He tracked down an eyewitness that he said investigators and prosecutors missed. And this is a man by the name of John Whaley, who apparently, besides Stephen Nichols, was the last person to see Rhonda Casto alive. And the attorney Arnold puts John Whaley on the stand at this hearing, and he asks him, so do you recall hiking up Eagle Creek Trail back on March 16th, 2009? And Whaley responds, very much so, yes. It had been very, very wet. And it came out during questioning that John Whaley had passed Rhonda and Stephen not long before her fatal fall. I mean, maybe within a matter of minutes, he passed them on one of the trails. So the attorney asked John, what she looked like. John said she was quite attractive. He estimated her to be in her younger 20s. Arnold asks, and there was a man following behind her? John said, yes, right behind her. Arnold says they were not arguing. And John said no. The attorney says Miss Casto appeared happy. And John says yes. So this is important. If the timing is as close as what people think it may be, right, within a matter of minutes, this man is testifying that right before she fell to her death,
she was happy.
She was happy. They weren't arguing. Seems pretty important.
Yeah, but I know that I've been in some arguments before where you're alone, you're arguing, and when somebody approaches, you can change that face, act like everything's cool, everything's fine, and until they pass by. Definitely
could happen that way. Now, apparently, this John Whaley guy, he told this to a deputy at the scene at the time that Rhonda fell, but apparently he was brushed off. And the attorney had another surprise, because during this hearing, he actually subpoenaed the prosecutor who was right there in court, because the attorney felt that the real reason that the prosecutor charged Stephen Nichols for murder was that he was pressured from a true crime writer by the name of Steve Jackson. But before Mike Arnold questions the prosecutor, he questions an investigator, Jerry Tiffany. And Tiffany would say that Steve Jackson offered to give them information about Stephen Nichols because he really wanted a conviction for the book that he was writing. So basically, Gibbs, I think they're saying that he wanted an ending to the story, and he wanted that ending to be a conviction.
Yeah.
So he was willing to try to help them by giving them whatever information he could.
By giving them any information that he has dug up or was going to dig up.
Yeah, I from what I've read, that's what I get. But then Arnold puts the deputy district attorney, Carrie Rasmussen, on the stand. And apparently the whole courtroom was kind of shocked that he would actually subpoena and call the prosecutor to the stand. And I'm going to read some of the transcript because I think it's really important. So Arnold says, there's an email that was read earlier into the record from Steve Jackson to you, dated February 17th, 2014. Do you remember receiving that? And the prosecutor says, I do. And then Arnold reads a portion of this email aloud. And it says, I'm sending this to you today as a courtesy to let you know that I am resuming my intentions to research and write about this. I hope that someday justice will be served. And then Arnold asks the prosecutor, what was the last line of your email back to him the next day? So the prosecutor reads it out, and she says, with all this being said, perhaps it is time to see what a panel of citizens will decide. And Arnold basically comes out and says that it was because of the pressure put on you by Steve Jackson. And of course, the prosecutor goes crazy on the stand because she's a witness, Gibbs, but she also has
She's got that.
She has to object as the witness or as the prosecutor. It's a very strange situation. So Arnold resumes and he says, so it's just a coincidence. She objects to that. And this is when the judge has to say, right now, you're not the prosecutor. You're a witness. There's another attorney that you have that's representing the state while you're a witness. I would have loved to have seen this play out. So Arnold says, so this was a cause and effect. He sent you the email which caused you to react by setting it for grand jury. Yes or no? And she says no. That was not the reason why she set it up for the grand jury. I don't know, Gibbs. It's very interesting, this fact that, you know, the crime writer is thrown into the mix. He's writing a book on this. There's emails going back and forth, and then all of a sudden, you know, could just be a coincidence. She's saying it is. She's saying that had nothing to do with it. But during this hearing, the state also brings up another motive outside of just the large life insurance payout. And what they say is that Stephen Nichols had fallen in love with Rhonda's younger sister, Melanie. And apparently, Gibbs, there were filed court documents in which Rhonda's sister alleged that she started having sex with Stephen when she was underage. Now, of course, Stephen denies this. His attorney calls these allegations totally false. And then his attorney goes on to really kind of attack Rhonda's mom. And it's all about saying that, you know, she wanted Stephen charged for murder because she wanted to be the benefactor of that big life insurance policy. He alleged that she was broke and that she needed the money.
Yeah, I mean, and he brought up that, you know, she's been on disability for a long time and citing other, you know, financial distresses that she had.
So they go through this hearing, and I think his attorney does a pretty good job of trying to get the case thrown out, but it doesn't work, right? They're going to have a trial for murder. But the prosecution, they face a pretty tough uphill battle. They have a lot of things going against them. You know, at one point, the Oregon Supreme Court ruled that an interview that Nichols gave after his arrest was inadmissible. We talked about the destroyed crime scene and autopsy photos. And in order to prove murder, you know, prosecutors would have to be able to show that Nichols intentionally caused the death of Rhonda Casto. And in the end, Gibbs, I think they just thought that they were going to have a very tough time doing this. And so the two sides struck a deal. In May of 2012, Stephen Nichols pleaded guilty to criminally negligent homicide and coercion. And because of that, prosecutors dropped the murder charge against him. He was given 3 years probation, but he was let out of jail for time already served.
Yeah, for during the trial period.
Yeah, he'd been in there for quite a while because of that big $2 million bail. So time already served and he's out.
Yeah. What really happened that day? Don't really know.
No, I don't think anybody will ever know.
No.
But there were some things that came out about that day that I think we have to talk about. You know, we touched on the fact that, you know, it took him a while to get out to the parking lot to call 911. Well, what would come out later is that it took him an hour just to get down to where her body was. Then he began CPR. But what Nichols would say was that After that, he laid on top of her for 45 minutes until he got cold. So, yeah, it took him a long time to get to the parking lot to call 911.
So there's the 2-hour gap.
And that's how it was explained later by him. But he's never been able to explain why he did what he did. Why would he lay on top of her for 45 minutes?
Right.
Is he grieving because he knows she's already dead?
But on the 911 call, it doesn't sound like someone grieving.
Right. So, I mean, this is one of those cases where, I mean, we're calling it unsolved because we just don't know the answers.
Right.
The fact that he pleaded guilty, he didn't plead guilty for murder. You know, he pleaded guilty to negligent homicide,
right,
and coercion. Because apparently they said that, you know, he did coerce her into taking this hike. I don't think she wanted to. He pestered her into doing it.
Yeah. Well, and I think his attorney, of course, this is me thinking, probably advised him that they should approach the prosecution for some type of deal, because you go through that hearing to get the motion to dismiss and you don't get that, you know, doesn't bode in your favor towards the actual, you know, trial. So if you could find a way to not go to trial.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Even if they thought they were going to win at trial, how much longer is he going to would he have spent in jail?
Right.
And if he can get out now with time already served, which he did.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you take that deal?
Yeah.
As opposed to taking your chance at trial when it could go very, very wrong.
Exactly.
And you could possibly spend the rest of your life in prison. But it's a head scratcher. It really is. There's really just no way to know.
You're exactly right on that.
But that's it. That's the case of the death of Rhonda Casto.
Yep.
All right, Gibbs, we got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Yeah, let's check them out.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm a listener from Canada, and I actually went through a bunch of different true crime podcasts before I got to yours, and it stuck. I guess I like your chemistry. But the one thing I always think about when I listen to these stories is when you hear about these crime families or when children commit crimes just like their parents did, how much of it is environment and how much of it is passed down genetically? It's very difficult to separate the two, I'm sure, but it's just a creeping thought, and I was wondering what you guys think. Thanks, bye.
Well, you know, Gibbs, well, first of all, thanks for the voicemail, Julia, and the kind comments.
Absolutely.
But, you know, as you and I both being Rhodes Scholars, we're extremely equipped to answer this question.
Well, at least one of us.
I'm joking. I'm saying that tongue in cheek. Neither one of us are really equipped to answer it. The only thing I would say is I really have no idea about the genetic part, how much, if anything, can be passed down like that.
Yeah. Environment?
An environment, we know.
Yeah.
Because we see that in the research of so many of these cases that environment can play a big part.
Hey, you're only as good as the things that you surround yourself with, and you're going to be with what if you're around a bunch of bad stuff, guess what?
But I do think the question is very valid, right? It goes back to that whole nature versus nurture. I just don't know how much of it is. I mean, I think if you get both, you're in bad trouble.
Yeah, yeah. Always best to grow up in a great environment. You know, not always going to prove itself.
And that's what I was going to say. To the flip side, there's got to be something to the nature, because we've seen cases where the nurturing was great.
Yeah.
The family was great.
I go with the odds, though. Stack your odds. So have a good, healthy environment, and the odds are going to be ever in your favor.
Yeah. We're going to need somebody much, much smarter than us, though, to answer that question.
Yeah. I don't know where you find that.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. This is Shelley Lanthorn. I'm in Columbia, South Carolina. My husband and I found your podcast about 2 weeks ago, and we have been listening nonstop. We are obsessed with true crime all the time. We just want to thank you for all the hard work that you put in researching and sharing with us, and just tell you how much we love your podcast. I'm about to go donate for the first time on PayPal. Thank you guys so much. Keep up the hard work and keep your own time ticking. Have a good day. Bye.
That might be a first, Gibbs, because we gave her a shout out.
Yeah.
For her donation on PayPal, and then she left us a voicemail.
That's a double
whammy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for everything.
Yeah, we appreciate that, Shelley and husband.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. My name's Lee. I'm calling from Houston. I just wanted to say that I love the show. I just recently found it a couple months ago when I finally discovered podcasts, because apparently I've been living under a rock. But anyways, I wanted to let you guys know something kind of grisly happened over here in Houston. I live on the northeast side of town, and over the weekend, some volunteers were cleaning up around Lake Houston, picking up trash. It's something that the community does every year, and a lot of Girl Scout troops go out there to get volunteer hours. Anyways, while they were out there cleaning, a girl and her mom found a plastic bag with a human head inside of it. So it's still very early in the investigation, obviously. They didn't find any other remains, but it's definitely something to look out for. And thanks for everything. I love the show.
Wow, that'd be a grisly discovery for Girl Scout.
Oh man, you can imagine,
or any kid, really.
Imagine that story down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how was your Girl Scout meeting? Oh, it was great. Well, me and Mom found a head.
Yep, that's not good. But we have a lot of Houston activity.
Yeah, we do.
And we just did on True Crime All the Time. We just did Dean Coral.
We did.
So she's probably going to find that one fascinating, being from the Houston area.
Yeah. Thanks for the call.
Hi, Mike and Gibby. This is Lola from Minnesota. Anyway, I was listening to episode 60 today. I know, I'm a few episodes behind, but I like to build them up so I can binge. Anyway, at the beginning of the episode, you mentioned that Charles Hatcher's mother's name was Lula, L-U-L-A. And I just thought I would share, it was just interesting because my great-grandmother's name was Lula. And she's the only person I've ever known in my entire life with the name Lula. So I just found it very interesting that his mother's name was Lula. Anyway, you guys are awesome. I love the show. I listen, like I said, I like to binge, so I wait for a while until I've got some episodes built up. Anyway, stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
All right. That's Lola calling about Lula. Now, she's talking about True Crime All the Time, so hopefully she's binging Unsolved too, or she's not going to hear her voicemail.
Yeah, that's true. I'm sure she is.
We played it on Unsolved, but
yeah.
Hopefully she does. All right. We appreciate it all.
Appreciate all the voicemails.
And a lot of people getting into podcasts. I mean, that's the one thing people don't realize. There's a lot of people that still don't know what a podcast is.
Nope.
There's a lot of people out there that can be turned on to True Crime All the Time and Unsolved.
Yeah.
And everyone should make that their mission to turn at least one person on.
That's right. It doesn't sound...
Oh, yeah.
Everybody turn somebody else on.
That's it.
Yeah.
To the show.
There you go.
All right, everyone. That is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking. All right, Gibbs. So that was a good show. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it's all right. It's rough. It's getting rougher, man.
Is it?
Yeah. It's just, I don't know if I keep doing this, man.
What are you saying?
I just don't think I can keep doing it.
What, Unsolved?
The whole thing, all the podcast.
TCAT and Unsolved?
Yeah, I know. I just don't think I can keep it up.
I know it's a lot of work, man.
It is, man. It takes a lot of time, a lot of work, and so, yeah, I don't think I can probably just make this my last one.
For both?
For both.
Well, how are we going to tell everybody? Shouldn't you have told me that before we started taping?
I think they'll figure it out.
So I could have put it out on the episode?
When you do the, hey,
this is
Mike and
No Gibby?
No Gibby. And so,
there's going to be no show without Gibby.
Well, you had to play all that Team Fergie shit.
I played one.
That's all it took, man.
Voicemail.
Gibby out.
What are we going to do?
Man.
There's no way I can just find somebody else to do it. It's not going to work.
All right, I'll stay. April Fools.
April Fools. That would be horrible.
That would be bad. Yeah.
All right, we love you guys.
The worst part is that someone listened and didn't wait till the April Fools.
And
they're like,
it might
shit,
be all over social media.
Yeah.
Gibby quit.
That's all right.
All right, happy Easter, everyone.